So, dear friends, I think I would like to speak a little bit this evening about the second of the three knowledges which the Buddha realized at his enlightenment. That is the knowledge of the multitude of beings and how they were reborn according to their actions. This will be karma. The Buddha later on explained that Chaitana is Kamma, so volition is Kamma. The actions that you do with a volition will have a result according to the quality of the volition that you had at the time. Beings who had the volition to cause harm and pain subsequently would experience harm and pain. Those who do actions with the intention of helping and a pleasure would subsequently experience those benefits and those pleasures. And then there's a mixed karma. Those who have a mixed motive are within one lifetime are doing a variety of different actions, and some of them have got that harmful intention to cause pain, and some have the intention to help and cause the relief of pain or to cause happiness. And some karmas that we do, we're in such a state of confusion that we don't know what we're intending. We've got some intentions, but we're not really very clearly aware of what's going on. And so then the mixture of actions then would result of being born into a realm where we have a mixture of results. And then the fourth case in this particular list is a person who is undertaking actions with the intention to come to the end of the samsara. That those actions with that volition would not be leading towards either happiness or pain in a future existence. Instead, those kind of actions could be, in combination with the other factors, would be compatible with coming to the end of rebirth. In the case of somebody who was well situated in the cycle of rebirth, there's a phrase that I come across. It's in some of the scholarly books about Buddhist ethics and karma. It's called karmic retribution, which sounds really like sort of mean, doesn't it? Like a punishment. And it has this particular idea that whatever is not experienced within this lifetime, that the results would come about in the next lifetime or thereafter that. The Buddha very clearly told us that as long as we are in this world, meaning in the cycle of birth and rebirth. There's not any escape from Kamma. Here's a verse. This is 127 in the Dhammapada. Not in the sky, nor in the middle of the ocean, nor even having entered a mountain cleft, there is no place on earth where one could stay and be freed from the results of evil deeds. The other sutta that I want to quote for you is it's number 10.217 in the numerical discourses. So this is a discourse about 10 things in the Book of Tens. The phrasing is a little bit convoluted, so try to follow it. The Buddha said, "Bhikkhus, I do not say that there is a termination of volitional kamma that has been done and accumulated, so long as one has not experienced its results. And that may be in this very life, or in the next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion." Now here the Buddha is talking about samsara apart from nibbana. So until the unconditioned is realized, we have this strong statement, even though he's not saying you will be punished. He's in this kind of indirect language saying there is not a termination of the kamma as long as one has not experienced its results. So kamma means action of volitional, intentional action. Somewhere you see the expression phala, or fruit. So the fruit is the result that would be experienced, conditioned by the action that, for example, in dependent origination, that dependent on the previous sankharas, all the previous volitional formations, comes to be taking birth in this life, acquiring, if one is a human being, acquiring the name and form, and acquiring the sense basis, acquiring consciousness, and so on. And then dependent on having the consciousness, having name and form, having the six sense bases, there would be contact. And depending on contact, there would be a Vedana, the feeling. That's either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling. And somewhere in the teachings, the feeling is given as the phala, that is the result of the previous actions. So the feeling that a person can experience is not necessarily like just because somebody cut you off in traffic doesn't automatically mean that you're going to experience a painful feeling. It depends on the previous conditions that have been set up in your psychology that are then creating tendencies that are ready to arise in some particular circumstance. And so then it could be that, you could experience something like that as being extremely painful, or you could experience it as being an occasion for a compassion, that you might think, oh, this other person must be in a hurry. May they be able to get to their destination on time? Or it could be an occasion for saying, oh, that's funny, or an occasion for just being completely neutral about it. So what kind of feeling arises is not necessarily or strongly connected with what is the materialistic thing that happened, but it's conditioned by the combination of the external factors that are happening, as well as the conditions within one's own psychology, one's own stream of consciousness. And so if a person doesn't know, well, this is what I want to, I'm going to set this up a little bit further and then come to the main new idea that I have for tonight. So he's saying, while we're in samsara, when this is sort of implied by what he said, when one has experienced the results of a kamma, of a previous kamma, then that volitional kamma could be terminated. It could be finished. Unfortunately, throughout the beginningless lifetimes, from so many eons of beginningless time, the number of karmas that a person or a being has accumulated could be uncountable. And so there can be a tremendous storehouse of painful and pleasant resulting fruits that are not yet experienced. And so you can't necessarily say that you're going to be able to reach liberation by experiencing the results of the kamma. But there is a certain kind of a way, isn't there, that a person who's wise, if you have done something foolish and unskillful, let's setting aside all the beginningless time in the previous lifetimes, say this morning you did something that was unskillful, and then later you could experience that your wise friends are criticizing, or they've lost some respect for you because of your foolish behavior. And that could be painful. Or else, you hurt somebody, and then that person is like alienated from you because of the hurt. And so then you experience that as being painful. Or it could be just that you're sensitive about your state of mind, and before you did that foolish thing, you had a kind of a bright and clear state of mind. And then after doing that foolish thing, there's kind of like a shadow or some depression, some kind of sorrow about that. And so that's that might be the result. So if you're not having enough intelligence or enough ability to observe causation, that you don't get that this is the result of that, then when you experience that unpleasantness, you would just experience the unpleasantness with aversion. And that would be triggering off another cycle of unskillful behavior rooted in aversion. So when you don't understand causation, that seems to me that it would really perpetuate. Then you become like Sisyphus pushing the heavy boulder up the mountain, and then it falls down and you have to push it up again. And you have to do it over and over and over again until you understand causation. And when you understand causation, then it could be possible that you could have that flash of insight if it's not the total liberation, but even one flash of insight about one particular incidence of an act, an intentional act that has been done, and say, oh, this is the result of that. And if you see the causation, then it would be possible to accept the result without becoming reactionary or becoming aversive, and just say, well, oh, this is sad, or this is painful. I feel embarrassed about that, but it's because I didn't have enough skill to be more skillful earlier on this morning. This is purely a fictional. I'm not admitting that I did something bad this morning, but I'm trying to give an illustration about how this could work. And so, actually, seeing how experiencing the results of Kamma can result in the termination of that energy, I think is a very significant. It's really significant, and it's a very different situation for somebody who sees the causation between karmic intentional actions and their results, and someone who doesn't get the connection. If we and a person, like an animal or a child, might have a very way of getting those connections. But as we become sort of like reflecting and thinking about it, and even before we get the some kind of like a materialistic bad fate that fell on us, and we see this, this bad thing happened because of a bad behavior. I got in a car crash because I was speeding. Okay, that's karma and its fruition. But if we're more even sensitive and realizing how our state of mind is colored by that, and seeing like energetic what's happening with the especially with the desire and delight happening in connection with pleasurable things, and aversion and hatred happening in connection with unpleasant things, and seeing those connections. So in this particular sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, then there's another statement. First he said, I do not say there's a termination of volitional karma that's been done and accumulated, so long as one has not experienced its results. And the second expression, And yet, monks, I do not say that there is a making of an end of dukkha through having experienced the fruits of intentional deeds that have been undertaken and accumulated. So this second statement is responding to some of the other schools of the religious thought at the time that thought that one could obtain liberation through penance or through experiencing punishments because of the previous unskillful karmas that have been done. This translation that I just read you is controversial. I got it from Bhikkhu Analayo, who felt that there might be a typo or something that was misunderstood and not transmitted correctly. The alternative translation is, and yet, monks, I do not say that there's a making of the end of dukkha through not experiencing the fruit of intentional deeds that have been undertaken and accumulated. And that is footnoted by Bhikkhu Bodhi as being, seems to be a contradiction of one of the main premises of the Buddhism, namely to make an end of suffering by experiencing the previous karmas would be impossible. In other words, by making an end of suffering by way of penance doesn't work, because in the immensity of Kamma, it would take an infinite amount of time to exhaust all of the negative karmas that has happened. And also, there's another part which is not addressed by either Analayo or Bhikkhu Bodhi, which is that some of the schools of thought, of religious thought at the time, felt that liberation was completely not connected with karma and its results. That regardless of whether one is doing bad karmas or not, that the liberation is following a vast natural cycle of it's like a great wheel of passing from one life to another life to another life to another life, and finally to liberation. And it's following its own law, which is much bigger than the little actions that humans do. And you just have to sort of like cooperate with fate and accept the fate that's happening, that's bringing about your liberation. Or it could be that you could say that one is liberated by the grace of or some kind of favor from a god. Or you could say that one can have liberation from realizing the true nature of the inner self or soul, and by means of coming to that realization of the nature of one's innermost self, that it puts you in contact with the cosmic reality, and that's your liberation. But that this innermost self that you're trying to discover and get in touch with is inherently pure and is not touched by the kammas that you do. So regardless of whether your behavior is pure or not pure, whether it's skillful or not skillful, good or bad, you have something within yourself which is inherently, blissful and like that. So the Buddha did not accept any of those teachings. And this is one reason why the statement that he made was given in a somewhat of a roundabout way, because he was avoiding making any kind of statement that could be bought into by any of these other kinds of wrong thought. But the Buddha is pointing out the value in understanding causation in terms of understanding kamma, intentional actions leading to results in this life or in subsequent lifetimes. And it seems to me that we shouldn't neglect that idea that you can't be free if you don't see it. But when you do see it, then, what the Buddha recommends is a different sutta that I can quote, or I can describe. I can't quote it completely accurately from memory. But if you know that you have killed in the past, you should not grieve and lament, thinking that because I have killed in the past, I'm going to go to hell forever. And if you have killed in the past, you should not think, I don't have to worry about it because most of the time I'm not killing. Instead, what the Buddha recommends is if I have killed in the past, I should remember the Blessed One advised that killing is not skillful and one should refrain from killing. And therefore, I should make the adhitthana, make the determination to give up killing. This is the precepts that we took before. And so, seeing the causation of unskillful deeds with painful results and making those adhitthanas, those determinations, those resolutions from a kind of unskillful action, then is setting down one of the most important foundations for making progress along this path of practice which is offered to us, which can ultimately lead to experiencing tranquility, joy, happiness, concentration. In other words, the capacity to enter into meditation and from time to time experience what it's like to be free from unskillful patterns in the mind. And having this discovery that we have the possibility we could choose. Those unskillful tendencies in the mind are actually optional. We're not just stuck in that pattern. We can do the things that create the conditions that make it possible to release and let go and to be freed from those unskillful patterns. And then in those moments, we have a chance to have a much greater level of seeing things as they really are. And when we can see more clearly, then our natural instinct that we have within, which is going towards liberation and not going towards continuously being enslaved or being like a Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the rock again and again. But instead, when we see what goes towards perpetuation of suffering and what goes towards freedom and peace, then it becomes easier and easier to move towards freedom and peace. And we have the opportunity for our own selves to realize those knowledges and in the end to experience the destruction of the taint of sensuality, the taint of becoming, and the taint of ignorance, and to realize our full and final liberation. So this is my talk for just now. The main thing that I'm trying to emphasize is that even while a person is still frequently caught up in unskillful patterns of the mind, if you can watch carefully and see the causation, that's a massively important step in being able to get out of the pattern of reactivity and move towards tranquility and being able to make further progress in this teaching. Now, I'm sorry to say I've got many things open on my computer. Let me see if I can come back to a position where I can see you all. There we are. With these simple thoughts, I hope it wasn't too simple for you, nor too complicated. I would welcome anybody's comments or questions. If you have a question, or if you don't have a question, if you have a report to give on when you had this kind of insight and how it helped you. So Chris, you have a hand up.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you very much for the teaching tonight. I found it insightful. I was hoping maybe you could give me some insight on how to apply it specifically to my situation. So I'll try to say it as succinctly as possible. But I've been struggling with depression and anxiety and constant physical pain and soreness and fatigue. And I've tried like x-rays and physical therapy, chiropractic. It hasn't really helped. But lately I've discovered a condition called TMS, which is basically psychologically your subconscious manifests these physical symptoms to distract you. Sorry. So I was wondering if you had any suggestions, I guess, on how to.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. That's really very brave and sincere. So I congratulate you on your question. First of all, remembering the teaching about the second arrow. So the first arrow is the pain that we experience, which can be the result of everything that happened before that brought us to this point. It could be physical, it could be psychological. And then the second arrow is the blaming, self-blaming, self-negative judgment against oneself, or else spinning in reactivity, saying, I don't accept this, I'm going to push it away, get rid of it. So there's like a hatred that comes up and it's the second arrow. So you can let go of the second arrow and then you just have the pain. And so it's really important not to be thinking, I shouldn't be feeling this way, like that, but instead being present for what's arising. Then beyond that, whatever can be done in terms of outside of Buddhism, whatever can be done in terms of medicine, psychology, and teachings that is useful does not need to be rejected. Just because one is practicing the Dhamma doesn't mean that you have to not take medicine or not follow other useful kinds of trainings to manage with pain. When undertaking a course of self-care, one thing that's fantastically useful that does come from Buddhism is mindfulness. So a friend of mine had a psychological condition and medicine was prescribed. And then that medication would work for a while and then it wouldn't work anymore. So my friend had done a lot of meditation with mindfulness and was able to make very careful observations about how he was feeling, what kind of thoughts were arising, what was manifesting in the body, just what was going on with the particular medication. And then he was able to report to his therapist what the impact of that medication was, whether it was the same or different than it had been weeks earlier or months earlier. And with that feedback loop, he was able to help his therapist to adjust the medication to get the best possible balance. And then my friend also was trying many other things that were more like of a practical nature that would affect his psychology. Like he found out that he needed to go to sleep no later than 9 o'clock at night in order to avoid having a really bad day the next day. And so he, told everybody in the community, this is it. Sorry if whatever the activity is, if it's after 9 o'clock, I'm leaving because I need to do this. And this was based on this mindful self-observation and self-care. And so there may be many other things that one can do of a more external nature that will ameliorate some of the difficulties that one has in life. Another aspect of it is being skillful about directing awareness, either like focusing on what is painful or else focusing away from what is painful. A different friend of mine who's a teacher had physical pain. And actually, this teacher is called Shaila Catherine. She's a local teacher in the Bay Area. If you ever have a chance to take a course with her, specifically related to pain management, she really knows about pain management from her own experience. And I'll put her name in the chat in a minute. But she said some teachers advised watch the pain and just go like into it, go like let your awareness go deep, deep, deep into the pain until it breaks up and just becomes like a vibration. And then other teachers said, don't do that, just watch the breath and just keep the breath on, just ignore the pain and just watch the breath. So there's, or ignore the pain and just do loving kindness contemplation, something like that. And it could be that at different times, different particular meditation approaches can be workable depending on where you're at. So I would suggest looking up Charlotte Catherine and asking her the same question that you just asked me because of her experience with that. So I hope these are a few ideas, but definitely don't give up. And there, I put Charlotte's name in the chat. Other questions or comments?
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I really appreciate it. I'm grateful.
Good. Richard.
Hello. What was that sutta that you were reading from? Is that 217?
Just 1 second. I'll.
5. There's several of them there, so it could be.
Yeah. Sanchetanika Sutta. I closed the file, so I'm gonna.
Oh.
It's number 217, 217.
Okay, 217.
Yeah, 10.217.
All right. So this, there's the idea that Buddha said, he doesn't accept, which is your existence is like a ball of string.
Right.
Like a fatalistic kind of thing. You hold onto the string and you throw the ball out until it runs out to the end, and then that's nibbana, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, but there's another problem, which is there's no way not to do action. So there's always going to be a reaction, a vipaka, right, to your actions. It may not be a direct vipaka. It just depends, a direct result. It just depends on a myriad collection of circumstances. But if that was the case, then you would be bound forever in samsara. And that's sort of like, there's that saying where myself and the universe will just go on eternally. Are you familiar with that concept? And
yes.
That's what they're talking about, is that it'll just be, I'm already existing here in this world, the universe is going on, and I'm just going to keep exist again, rebirth again, and there's no way off of, samsara. So what the Buddha is indicating here is that, no, if you change your volition, right, you can change your direction. And that allows you to free yourself. And that's why he's saying, but I don't say, right, that, there's no way to stop this process, sort of in a way. I'm just kind of paraphrasing, right? So that you can free yourself. So, but the initial statement, like he says, for anyone who's taken birth, you have to experience old age, disease, injury, whatever, and death. So you've taken this birth, you've got to go through that. Even the Buddha had to go through that. Even the Buddha got old, he got sick and diseased, and then he passed, physically he passed away. But after that, the trajectory of your mind, your volition, your chaitana, right? If you have awakened to the truth, you're not bound again, by any action that you did in this lifetime, just as the course of just living, just being in a body, you're free from that. So anyways, I just wanted to make that point. And that's why in the sutta, it talks about the 5, well, actually it only talks about 4 of the precepts, and how if you're breaking the first 4, you're in trouble, But if you get to the point where you can hold those precepts and you don't do those things anymore, then you can even go on. This is not for a fully enlightened person, but it's, you can go on to the heavens. You don't have to take birth in the negative realms again. You know what I mean? At least that much. You know what I mean? Try to get on that kind of path. And then I think, is it towards the end of the sutta though?
Well, that sutta has quite a lot in it besides the part that I was
Right.
focusing on. It talks about the 10 courses of unwholesome action.
Right, where he talks about, but I do not say there is a making of an end of suffering so long as one has not experienced the volitional kammas. And that's kind of like what I was saying, you don't have to experience your previous volitional kammas if you change your mind and get right view. Remember, he talks about the mental actions, and he says the good mental action is to hold right view, right, and has a correct perspective. Thus, there is what is given, sacrificed, and offered. There is fruit and result of good and bad actions. There is this world and other world. There is mother and father. There are beings spontaneously reborn. There are in the world ascetics and Brahmins of right contact, right practice, who, having realized this world and the other world for themselves by direct knowledge, make them known to others. So that's the adoption of right view, whereas the wrong view is people who say, no, there's no other world, no, there's no result of karma, no, it doesn't matter how we treat our parents, whatever, right? There's no giving and sacrifice, dana, charity, stuff like that. That goes in the opposite direction, and Buddha refers to that as the uneducated worldling, I think it is. He describes it. Anyways, I don't want to talk too much, but it's a very nice sutta, very fascinating. Thank you very much.
Smita has a hand up.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
So I wanted to understand, since we were also talking about heaven and hell, is there, like, okay, in our society, we have like the court system, you have a judge that decides, okay, yeah, you're guilty, you're not guilty. But then, who is doing this sort of judgment? Who's saying, okay, you did something bad, you're going to go to hell. You did something good, you're going to go to heaven. And I understand that you were pointing to causation. So it looks like it's something in ourself that determines the result of our actions, rather than a judge or somebody else saying, okay, you go to heaven and you go to hell. But I'd like to get your insight in this matter.
Oh, thank you. I used to feel in a way that Buddhism was using a circular reasoning because they said that it was like intrinsically in the nature of wholesome karma that it leads to happiness, and unwholesome karma leads to pain. But actually, it's like the definition of a wholesome karma is the kind of actions that lead to happiness are defined. That's what skillful karma is leading to happiness. Things that lead to happiness are skillful karma. If we can then finally be able to make a distinction between like a more like a true happiness or long-term happiness and benefit, and not confuse happiness with the kind of pleasure that's very fleeting and that maybe has some negative consequences. So the pleasure of getting high on drugs or on alcohol, which is followed by a crash and having a terrible headache and some remorse the next day, that's not the kind of happiness that is skillful. In ordinary the ordinary ethical theory at the level of heaven and hell is it's a you could call it, it's what's called a character ethic. If you do things that have the intention to be for your welfare, your true welfare, and for the welfare of others, for not harming yourself and not harming others, and if you're very clear with that intention, then even if the action that you do is like not 100% perfect, because you don't necessarily know, you're not omniscient about always knowing everything that would solve a particular circumstance. But if your intention is really got that characteristic, then Buddhism is predicting that acting with that kind of intention will make you into a happy type of person. This is called character ethics. It's one of the theories of ethics. And being that kind of person with a good character, then it's like your psychology has got that tendency. And then when negative things happen to you, you won't have as much probability of reacting in an unskillful way because you've developed a character that's a character of non-harming, a character, like a maturity in that way. Now, so far, we've just gotten to heaven. We've escaped from hell and gotten to heaven. Then in Buddhism, Buddha teaches the defect of heaven, which is impermanence, and that actually there's something beyond that, which is letting go of all conditioned things and not clinging, not holding on to any kind of acquisitions, not identifying with anything, having a complete freedom in that sense. And so this is sometimes in the commentary, or in some of the texts, they talk about Kamma like in an arahant, a fully enlightened being, or a Buddha, is able to do things and make decisions, but none of the decisions that are done by a Buddha or a fully enlightened person have the result of putting them in heaven or taking them to hell. So that that capacity has been cut off. But nevertheless, they fully can experience the tranquility of peace and freedom, and the brightness and the seriousness of the clarity of that. So, but the Buddha definitely never recommended a kind of system of ethics that had some person like a god or a judge who's giving out the punishments and the rewards. Instead, it's within the definition, the kind of life or the kind of behavior that leads to happiness. And if you can really understand what that is at a mature level, then you've got the kind of kammas that will take you towards heaven. Does that answer it?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. Dinwei, you have a hand up.
Thank you, Aya. In terms of Kamma and its fruition, can you comment on the contrast between what happened to Moggallana and Anglama? How do you pronounce Anglama? He killed 99 people. Yeah.
Yes.
So, it just seems a little bit, I don't know what Moggallana did in his past life for the fruition for him to be murdered, right? As opposed to Anglamara, who killed, I don't know if it was really 99, but certainly many people. And, the fruition of his kamma for that was to have food thrown at him and be yelled at down the street as he's walking. So it's a big contrast. And I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Well, according to the teaching, when we are fully enlightened, there is not any more karma that's going to have an effect in a subsequent lifetime. But there still is the residual karma that will be happening in this lifetime. And that's related to actions that have been done within this lifetime. And it's also related to whatever would have been inherited from a previous existence. I don't feel able to, I don't recall, maybe somebody else will recall, if there's anything specific about Mahamoggallana and why he had that particular experience in this lifetime. But I could tell you a different story. This actually came up recently in this very class a few weeks ago, or some time ago, where we were thinking about when the tsunami happened in 2005 or whenever it happened that affected Thailand and Sri Lanka, why so many hundreds of thousands of people could have had their lives affected so seriously, and whatever number of people were killed. And what the question is whether they have a shared karma that caused that bad thing to happen to them. Or alternatively, another question that was asked in terms of war, as somebody who experienced the Vietnam War. So, well, did the Vietnamese people have some kind of terrible, horrible shared karma that caused all of them to have to go through such miserable suffering? And in part, the answer is, at the end of life, if that same tsunami has killed me and 9 other people, what our destination is as far as the next life is not depending on the tsunami, it's depending on our individual karma. So one person may be bound for heaven, one person may be bound for hell, and one person may be fully enlightened and this is their last breath. And actually, how they experience their moment of death or the moment just before death is because of the karma that they have. It's sometimes commented how when there's a traumatic event that affects the whole society or that affects many people, that some individuals are able to kind of like recuperate and sort of land on their feet and regain their mental health and even become more like spiritually mature and more powerful, having gone through a painful experience. And then other individuals become even like crippled or psychologically crippled because of the same or similar negative experience. And so that's showing how, according to the Kamma that a person has brought into a situation, determines both how it's experienced and what the further results would be. I hope that might help. And if other people have an idea about that, they can give their answer. But I would like to hear also if anybody has anything to say about, in your spiritual path, when you understood causation and you were able to relax about accepting the result of causation, whether that was, something that you'd be willing to speak about. Damon.
I can't speak about that, so I'll wait for my question. If someone else could talk about the causation thing first.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead with your question, Damon.
Oh, okay. Well, you've talked a lot tonight about skillful acts, and I wanted to know, I'm sure there's lots of different categories of skillful acts, but in Buddhism, well, I'm more familiar with Judaism, but in Judaism, there's a lot of emphasis on so-called mitzvah or mitzvot, which are usually acts of service for others, altruistic, deeds. Is that similar to that in Buddhism, that the skillful acts there's a large category of doing things for others and acts of service towards others?
In Buddhism, there's a word called chaga, which means generosity. And, it can mean being generous in service. And it also can mean sort of like having a generous heart, in the sense that, like, if I had an opinion and somebody disagrees with me or has a different idea, it's kind of like a generosity of the heart that I can welcome and acknowledge their idea, even though it's different than what I was thinking. So what makes the generosity even more skillful is depending on what a person's intention is about it. So if I want to be giving a gift to the temple, and I want to be seen by a lot of people and have my name on a plaque and become admired by many because of my good deed, those selfish motivations will reduce the power of my good deed. Whereas if I don't have those selfish ideas, but I just want to do what's good, then that's so the distinction is, another distinction that's made is between ones that are done by body, by speech, and by thought. And thought is the beginning. So planning to do a good deed or wanting to do a good deed, all by itself, that's already skillful and can be acknowledged in that way. And then talking about it is sort of, it's like from the thought, it goes to the talk, and the talk is has more impact, more karmic impact. And it could be that, like talking to oneself, like you're talking yourself into something, or talking to others. So like if I want to kill somebody, that's one thing, but if I start talking about it. That's another thing. And then the last, or the level that's got the biggest karmic impact is doing something with the body, doing a material thing. And that if you do a material thing, you would have already have done something, had a thought, and had some at least internal talk about it.
Thank you.
But chaga, especially chaga, is like one of the gateways, one of the entranceways to this path of practice.
Great.
Yeah. Rawanti?
Thank you, Vaya, for the teachings tonight. So one of the instances that came to my mind is in terms of understanding causation. So whenever I came across hearing maybe harsh speech or scolding from someone, instead of, I used to react to it. And then with the understanding of the Dhamma, then I was able to reflect upon it, thinking this is a resultant or a Kamma vipaka of a bad deed that I have done in the past. So then when I reflect upon that, my reaction was I was able to hold on to like not reacting. And then with the understanding, I think I was able to cut off the generating more negative karma. So that's one of the instances that came to my mind.
Thank you.
And the other one is the story about the Mahamoggallana. I've heard that in a previous lifetime, he had beaten his parents to death, listening to he was misled by his wife, and he had taken them to the forest, and he had beaten his old parents to death. So that is one of the weighty karmas that one couldn't avoid, and that's why he had to go through such a brutal kind of harsh death at the end of his lifetime. Even though he was an arahant, he wasn't able to avoid that heavy karma. I think that's something that I heard in one of the stories before. Just wanted to share that.
Very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Richard?
Yes, as there was some discussion about hell, I think it's important to know that in the Samyutta Nikaya in Book 4, Section 36, Vedana Samyutta, Sutta number 4, translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi as the bottomless abyss. It's Patala. Patala generally means the hells. And it says that, people say that below the ocean, there are the patalas. In other words, lower than the ocean, under the ground, there are the patalas. But Buddha says no. He says there aren't any hells like that. And then he goes on to describe. He says, when an uninstructed worldling is feeling all kinds of suffering, painful bodily feeling, he sorrows, grieves, and laments. He weeps and beats his breast and becomes distraught. Okay. So at that point, he is in Patala. He is in the bottomless abyss and can't find a foothold to get out. But he says when the instructed noble disciple is contacted by bodily feeling, he does not sorrow, grieve, or lament. He does not weep, beat his breast, and become distraught. He has gained a foothold and climbed out of the bottomless abyss. So I know that there are a number of suttas. Majjhima Nikaya, I believe, has 2 at least, where they go into great detail about hells and punishments and everything. But my personal opinion is that this is the actual Buddhist teaching, and that some of that is sort of like later day inventions, borrowing from Hinduism and stuff like that, because those kind of descriptions are found in Hinduism. The other thing I wanted to mention was you asked about getting an insight into oh shoot, my
Because
mind forgot the causation. And so I can't go into a lot of details because it's sort of a long story, but many years ago when I was studying Zen, before I knew about Theravadan Buddhism, and I went to the first Zen retreat, and I was sitting in meditation during a lecture by the Roshi, and he said the khandhas are different in Zen than they are in ancient Theravadan, and he explained it in a certain way. And he said, so when you attain the fourth khandha, you start asking questions of yourself, like, who am I? Where did I come from? What am I doing here? Where am I going? Those kind of questions, right? And when he said that, it's like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like an atom bomb went off in my head, and the world that had been upside down suddenly turned right side up. And I could see that it was my own Chaitanya, my own mind's volition that was sending me on this path to search throughout samsara on this journey, being lost and confused and misidentifying with things. And, oh, I must find an enlightened master to, help me find the true way and deliverance and all these things. And it was quite a profound experience. And so that's like that causation, when Buddha talks about when you understand causation, you attain sotapan, stream entry. And so at that point, from that day forward, even though I knew nothing about it, I was to read about it many, many years later when I started studying Theravadan, the three fruits of gaining full faith in the Buddha's teaching, knowing that rites and rituals cannot affect anything in terms of, becoming enlightened, right? And knowing that the kaya was not the self, those things became permanently in my mind. So I'm not saying I'm a very advanced Buddhist or anything like that. Mostly I'm just into, studying about Buddhism. But that causation, seeing that it's your own mind causing these problems, is really the key of Buddhism. It's your own mind telling you these stories, and you're kind of going along with them. It's about the best way I can describe it. Anyways, I hope that's helpful and valuable to others. Thank you.
If you don't mind to type the reference to the sutta and the Samyutta Nikaya, what you mentioned is very much on the point. When experiencing a pain, if a person sorrow, lament, and grieve and get worked up about the pain, then they've not caught a hold of his teaching. And that's really, what hell is like painful, but it's not just painful, but it's painful plus all of that other grasping onto the pain. And I think that's a really, really useful teaching. I know we're getting a couple of people who've spoken more than once, and it's fine with me. I'm glad to have this conversation. But if you haven't spoken yet, you don't need to be shy about putting your hand up. Didn't we?
Thank you, Aya. I just wanted to, since you asked for examples about causation, cause and effect, I have to say personally, that is one of the most important teachings of the Dhamma that has impacted my life. And most recently, I think I sent you an email that I had been dealing with hip pain, and what was causing it was that my left femur was coming out of alignment, which messed up all the muscles in my hip. Mm-hmm. And I used causation to understand why that happened. And it was multiple reasons, really. One of them just so happened to be that I was lying on my side to meditate, and that was too much pressure. Was one reason. I was riding an electric bike, and when you're riding at a much faster speed, you're going to hit those bumps a lot harder, and that's a lot of impact on your sacrum and hip and spine, and just the way I moved. So it was so being able to sort of trace. I don't think I traced all of the causes, but definitely being able to see, the multiple causes. There was no reason for me to be upset about it or angry about it. And the insight that I got, and this is, it's my hip is getting better, but I was also dealing with SIBO, which was a gastrointestinal issue at the same time. But I realized, I never really understood Kamma, and it had a really hard time understanding it. And then finally, when I realized, oh, Kamma is just causes and effect. It was like this light bulb. So to hear you say today, what you need to really get out of it is to understand causes and effect, was a really big confirmation for me, that I can sort of trust my own inner wisdom when these insights come up. So anyways, thank you for today's talk.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your patient listening. I know the conversation among the group is very useful. I hope the talks are useful and meditating together is useful. I want to take these last couple of minutes to make an announcement. We realize that some people have been getting sort of tired of Zoom. It's wonderful to hear so many fantastic teachers giving Dhamma talks on Zoom, so that's great. But it's also wonderful to be in person. If you would like to come to Pengrove, if you have a chance, we are having our Vesak on June 3rd. That's on Saturday, June 3rd, here in Pengrove. And it would be really fantastic to see any of you who could come out that day. I know that the Vesak at the Wat Bunonasorn is on Sunday, June 4. And so I kind of, I don't know if it would be too much to do 2 Vesak in one weekend, but if you're interested, it would be lovely to see you on June 3rd. And as well, we are beginning now, as long as the weather is nice, to go ahead and have our Sunday programs on outside in our outdoor pavilion, so that you have a choice to either watch them on Zoom or else come in person. So if you need to have some face-to-face contact, you're welcome to do that. So those are my announcements for today. And I don't know if there's any particular announcement from the Wat Bunonasorn.
No, thank you for mentioning. Yes, we do have the bazaar on Sunday, June 4. So please come. It will be very crowded and it will be very festive.
Okay.